Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Naoya Inoue versus David Picasso fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I'll try my best to get out there for you guys. There is a fight which is on this card, which is Kenshiro Taraji versus Willy Boldo Garcia, and I had that requested to do as a Patreon video a couple weeks ago now, and that has just been released onto the YouTube, but was out on the Patreon, like I say, a few weeks ago when it was requested. So again, that's an example of you can request any kind of video, and I'll try to get it out like that. And yeah, if you are wanting to join, of course, the link will be in the description. And let's get straight into this one though. And I mean, first of all, before we get straight into it, this should be coming out on Christmas Day, so I hope everybody's having a very good Christmas. But to get straight into it, this was originally set out to be a Japan versus Mexico event, or at least that was what it was kind of rumoured to be and what it was meant to be. And with David Picasso, Willy Boldo Garcia, and Sebastian Hernandez all on this card, being against Japanese opponents, and of course Interaji, Inoue, and Nakatani, that's kind of what it is. But if I was a Mexican boxing fan, I would probably be unhappy seeing the Mexican names representing their country, as they're not the highest, best names from Mexico, and they are fighting the best Japanese fighters around at the moment. So again, it's, like I say, if I was a Mexican boxing fan, I wouldn't really want to see this be branded as the kind of Japan versus Mexico card, because it's not the level of Mexico boxing in which, I'm sure is around. And, it's not that highest elite level of Mexican boxing. And again, it's just, a little bit of something in which I wanted to kind of point out. And this event is a really good event on paper. I mean, a lot of, possibly, I suppose, a lot of mismatches, which could come to fruition. But again, we will have to wait and see. There could be a big shock upset amongst them. It's a shame to not see the Jazz Dickens fight on this card. Obviously, he was meant to be fighting Haito Satsumi, but Satsumi pulled out due to an injury. And to be fair, this probably was most likely, in my opinion, going to be the closest fight on the card. Maybe that's giving away my prediction a little bit, but on paper, at least, it was meant to be, with Jazz Dickens having such a good kind of turnaround in his career and getting back to being a world champion. But again, nonetheless, it does mean that England get to keep 3 world champions for a little bit longer. So again, at least that's something for a British boxing fan. To start off speaking about the main event though, and now this is the big chance for Inoue to make it onto a proper world level stage, setting him up so nicely for a Nakatani matchup that has to happen if both win. Of course, when Nakatani fought Cardenas, that was kind of seen as the big time getting him to America to have a big fight and to get a bit of attention around him that way. And that was good, and that, I think, also helped the fact that Cardenas was able to drop Inoue, the fact that that was kind of hyping up things a little bit there. But it wasn't as big of an event of which it could have been for Naoya Inoue. And, I hope this gets built up and branded as a kind of big event and does have the fans turn out to watch him, because Nakatani is a huge name in Japan and he gets a great fan base to watch him all the time. I mean, again, the last fight for Akhmadaliev was on paper a really big fight, and it was kind of built up for a while with people saying that Inoue was ducking Akhmadaliev and all of this. But again, when it actually came to the fight and the promotion of the fight, it was just promoted really poorly, I felt, and it wasn't pushed well enough. And like I say, hopefully, at least this fight, like I say, it's not as big as the Akhmadaliev fight, but it has been pushed and promoted better, and they are already hyping up the matchup and the possibility of a Nakatani fight, which is again what has to happen. It should be hyped up. It should have the respect in which it deserves as a fight, because it is such a great matchup. And again, it's nice to see that His Excellency has now chosen the right time to get involved with Naoya Inoue. And at the early point of this year, I think they said that Bob Arum actually said that they wanted to have Inoue and Nakatani on the same card. And I mean, there's no real surprise that it hasn't happened until they've kind of gone on to the zone and got His Excellency involved in everything like that, because I mean, I don't know if technically Naoya Inoue and Nakatani are still working with Tekken Promotions and having their fights on Top Rank anymore. I doubt it. I think they have kind of moved along and pushed on a little bit more, and I'm glad to see that hopefully now Inoue and Nakatani are kind of moving away from the Top Rank events, because they've gotten this far, which is a great level. He's a huge name, and I just don't think that Top Rank, the way that they're going with, I mean, I watched the Naoya Inoue versus Akmadalia fight, which, like I say, was on paper a huge fight at the time, and it was a big, it should have been a big moment. I watched it on Top Rank's Facebook page on a live stream, and that was their official kind of broadcasting of it to countries around the world. I mean, I think they were kind of trying to sort out their promoters and stuff at that time, but when you have a big fight like that, you can't be promoting it on a Facebook page live stream. That's just so poor, in my opinion. And now they're working with the Top Rank Classics channels, where they're having it free to air in America, which is it's good for certain events, but when you have the big names like this, you can't be having them like that. And I just don't think they'll get the viewership the same level as what they deserve. And again, it's going to stop them from reaching that worldwide audience a bit more, because they just won't know where to watch them. And it's the same with Junto Nakatani as well. I mean, I don't think he fought on a top ranked show, at least that was broadcasted. I think he might have fought on Amazon Prime in Japan, so that probably did get good viewership there. But again, it's just not getting pushed the same kind of way in which they deserve. And now, hopefully, if they kind of stay on the zone and keep working with His Excellency, maybe we can see more and more Japanese boxing events get brought over. And again, that would be great to see as well. If Tekken Promotions work with His Excellency a bit more and stuff like that as well, because like I said, there's a lot of great Japanese talent, and they just don't get the same kind of level of recognition in which I felt that they deserve. Inoue with this fight has, and also, with the possibility of this Nakatani fight, he has the chance to become a true, undebatable pound for pound number one. As if you look at it at the moment, he's in the best position at being 32 years of age and the only current undisputed champion male boxing. He's in the prime years of his career, and he's going to have plenty more years, probably at least 5 more years, 4 or 5 more years of his career, and he can be just fighting continuously from then. And even if he loses, the names in which he's already racked up, and if he keeps testing himself and keeps wanting to test himself and keeps fighting as actively as what he has been, it's great to see a pound for pound star fighter fighting as regularly as he is as well. I mean, Alexander Usyk fights once, twice a year normally, maybe 3 times if we're lucky, if the big money's there, like with the Tyson Fury. But most of the time, he's only going to be fighting, I think, once this year, and then Crawford only ever really fought once a year if we were lucky as well. But now, having Inoue fighting his 4th fight of the year, again, it's excellent to see. And like I've mentioned, he's in the great position now to become a pound for pound number one. As I mean, not necessarily this win will put him as a pound for pound number one over Usyk, but obviously Usyk's achieved great things. But at the moment, with Crawford now retiring, that puts himself in a at least second position, if not a number one position. And Usyk probably doesn't have that long left of his career, and he's pretty much going to do whatever he wants until he retires. So if Inoue beats Nakatani, then he is pound for pound number one. And like I say, he still has plenty more years to actually develop and to go and beat other guys and beat other opponents. And if he keeps being as indestructible and amazing as which he has been, then like I say, he has that possibility. And again, I don't want to get too excited just at the moment, but I mean, Inoue has proven a lot so far, and of course we'll have to wait and see. He hasn't quite fought somebody in which we've put as high of a level as that of a Junto Nakatani, and of course there's talks and rumours of the matchup against Jesse Bam Rodriguez, and he can be, he has that potential to be a future pound for pound number one star himself. But again, we will have to wait and see. Just, I thought I'd throw it out there that Inoue definitely is the face of the pound for pound rankings, in my opinion, at the moment, at least a future of it, I think. And I'm not really surprised to see this fight being made for Picasso, as he's been around high up in the rankings for a little while now, and he's been floating around on the big undercards of big events, and he's been collecting a nice on-the-eye record. But you do have to say a lot of his fights haven't been high level, really, with the best names on his resume being Hovhannissian, who he beat coming off a KO loss to Neri, and then also lost after that to another person who's fighting on this card in Sebastian Hernandez. And then Kameda was his last fight, which was a step up in opposition. And Kameda has just gone on to beat former two-time, I think, world champion in Casemiro. But he was also at the time coming off a KO loss to Neri as well. And again, it was a good performance, but it wasn't a crazily good performance. And, you know, like I say, he's got a lot of rounds under his belt and he's got a nice resume on paper. And that's not bad for a 25-year-old. I think it's good. And I think, you know, he can't just be collecting more and more kind of names at that level. He did have to take a step up, but I just think this maybe is a little bit of a rushed step up. Like I say, he's only 25 years old, so if he does lose, you know, he can bounce back and come back. But I think there could have been possibly two more matchups against elite level opposition before he is to take that step up. Again, I would have maybe preferred to have seen that. But like I say, nonetheless, he's here to take this fight, and credit to him, you know, a young guy taking this fight to get hopefully a good payday, a well-deserved good payday, and test himself against, like I've just kind of talked about, a top 2 pound for pound star. To speak about both fighters individually, though, I mean, I'm going to miss off things of Inoue because he is such a great fighter, but just mainly what I saw from the kind of past two performances of him, he's got great range management, he's got precise work, he's got great hand speed, he's got great power and efficiency in his work. He can obviously make adjustments and doesn't get discouraged. Even though he's been dropped against Cardenas and Neri, he's been able to make the necessary adjustments and make sure that he's become more switched on, more focused, and more controlled, and been able to go on to dismantle them and get an excellent stoppage afterwards. And to be fair, just to touch upon the Akhmadaliev fight a little bit more, obviously people were kind of concerned a little bit about the power in which Akhmadaliev does possess and the countering ability he has, and we're thinking that could perhaps cause problems to Naoya Inoue, who, like I say, has been dropped a couple of times now in his professional career at a high level. But I think he's actually made adjustments in his whole kind of fighting style, which has just led to him being a lot more focused, a lot more switched on, and a lot less likely to get overly aggressive or to not prioritize his footwork or to leave his head quite as open when he is throwing. Because, I mean, he got caught very late on by Akhmadaliev, and there was a couple of times in which he got caught with decent counters, but, you know, nonetheless, he still won 12 out of 12 rounds, at least in my opinion, against Akhmadaliev, and he really did dominate that fight. And like I say, for a fight in which fans were saying that he was ducking the opponent of because he was such a scared opponent in Akhmadaliev, to win 12 rounds out of 12 is pretty incredible, really. Like I say, a power punching guy like that as well, it was very, very impressive. And going in against somebody, like I say, who's got that countering ability as well, who could perhaps be the weakness, be the style in which you are weak to on paper from your past performances, and then, like I say, still dominate, does of course show that he can make the adjustments. He's got sharp reactions, good feints, he pushes his straight shots through you and through the guard, he knows when to change gears, and again, you look back to any kind of time in which he's taken on paper a bit of a step down in opponent. I mean, you can look at his Yi Jun Kim fight where he's changed gears pretty much instantly and then just knocked him out whenever he wanted to. Same with the TJ Doheny fight, he changed gears and then made TJ Doheny's back go. And like I say, just as soon as he can do that. And same with the Neri fight as well, he changed gears then and then ended up getting a brutal knockout. It's all just, like I say, controlling the tempo. He's got great punch variety. He takes that little short kind of step back to then set up shots. He's explosive. He's a great fight finisher. He uses his full range on his straight shots. He can change up his power levels in his punches. He can box multiple styles. He can box in close. He can counter at a range. He can, catch and counter. He can go, like I say, fully from range and just use his full range. He can be explosive pouncing in. He has so many different styles in his arsenal. He's such a well-rounded fighter. He's able to find and create the gaps very well, and he's very fluid in his work. Negatives about him, I think he drops his hands at times early. His chin can be damaged. Again, I don't know how badly it can be, and I don't know if Picasso will be able to exploit that, but, he definitely does overlook his opponents early. I think that has been shown a little bit, and again, perhaps he could be overlooking Picasso here to then perhaps be looking at a Nakatani matchup, especially if Nakatani wins in destructive fashion. I'm sure he'll be backstage watching that fight, and that's the risky part of having two fighters fight each other, potentially in the future in a big fight, and they're both on the same card. The main event guy is always watching the guy underneath and trying to deliver a better performance than the guy underneath, and that of course can lead you to be ill-disciplined and to get caught. His chin can be in the air, he's not got the strongest of guards, and he can be caught around his guard. That was the only kind of thing in which Akhmadaliev was able to do a little bit. He can be caught over his jab at times when he throws it, and if you can counter it right. He's sometimes not taking backward steps, so he does kind of take a bit more pressure and take a little bit more punishment. Again, that's sometimes to then set up counters and things like that, but he is best, in my opinion, when he is taking that subtle kind of step backwards. He does go backwards in lines, in my opinion. He's not always circling off. He makes obvious he is going to the body because of the fact that he does often start from low. He's not a Canelo who kind of feints going up and then go down to the body. He can be, like I say, overly aggressive and not prioritize his footwork and leave his head open, like I've talked about. And his physicality can be a little bit poor. He's never really been the physically strongest of guys, and Picasso is a bigger figure. He's not really the strongest of figures, but he is a bigger guy, so perhaps that could maybe influence something. I'm not too sure. And I would say, like I say, he does find the openings and create kind of openings, but he doesn't work the angles as well as somebody as possibly you would say Jesse Bam Rodriguez does, who, like I say, really kind of works the angles and pivots around in front of you. And Inoue isn't really always kind of, like I say, working the angles, and like I say, it's very much straight backwards and forwards most of his work. Picasso, as a fighter, he works well to the body. Most of his good work does kind of work to the body. He keeps his hands high, especially his right hand, which is pretty much glued to his chin the entire time, which is something in which you definitely recommend against. And Inoue, he's got solid punch variety, he's got good short shots, he does kind of want to work in close, he can deal with physicality. When he puts his combinations together, they're good, they double up well. Like I say, he does double up his punches well, going from head to body nicely. He's pretty accurate for the most part, he doesn't force the knockout, he can step in nicely with a right hook to the body. He comes in also with a nice screw uppercut at times, and he does for the most part try and walk you down. And again, all these things were kind of on display in that last performance against Kameda, and in a couple of his other kind of standout fights, which have just been in Mexico, which have been against lesser opponents. Negatives about him, you could say he plants his feet for too long and leaves himself in them bad positions to get caught. He's not got as good as reactions as that of Inoue. He does leave gaps open. He often leans in to allow his opponent to kind of chop down punches on him. At least that's something in which I've noticed a bit. He's not as powerful, kind of anywhere near as powerful, really. He can give you time to regroup, even if he is doing well. Against Kameda, he probably could have actually gotten his opponent out of there, but he did slow down quite considerably, and I don't even think that was just due to tiredness. I think he was I don't know if he was loading up on a punch or if he just didn't think his opponent was slowing down a bit, but Kameda was kind of actively slowing down at one point, and the work of Picasso was causing him to struggle, but he just, like I say, kind of slowed down and stayed in range, and then Kameda was actually able to push back Picasso a little bit then. And like I say, it was just a bit of a weird thing in which I've seen him do on a couple of occasions, just not taking the opportunities when they're there. He's not as fast, and that's kind of been evident as well in his fights. He's not good when he's loading up on his punches. He doesn't enjoy fighting at a fast tempo or really fighting on the back foot. He'll try and set a bit of a fast tempo, but like I say, that can kind of fluctuate. And then he likes, like I say, be able to control the fight at his pace, and I don't think he'll be able to do that against Inoue. And he doesn't utilise his full range. That could be something in which he could really do and could cause problems to any opponent by doing if he was able to utilise his range a bit better. He can shorten up his jab well, which is nice for a guy who does have quite long limbs typically, but he doesn't, like I say, actually utilise the full range of motion in which he has. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Naoya Inoue is going to be able to win via TKO in round 6. I think it is going to be a pretty dominating performance for the most part by Naoya Inoue. I think Picasso probably is going to give him a lot of respect from him just being young. Like I say, hasn't fought anybody near the level of opponent as Inoue, and I think as soon as Inoue wants to turn it up, I think he is going to be able to get Picasso out of there, with Picasso perhaps just not being used to fighting on the back foot. And even if it does go on the front foot, Picasso, for a little bit, I think Inoue can catch and counter and land shots on him relatively comfortably. And like I say, Picasso just won't be used to getting hit with the power in which Inoue will land on him. And then who he goes on to fight next? I mean, hopefully the winner of Nakatani versus Hernandez, which I'm going to talk about now. And it is a very exciting kind of proposition to see that Junto Nakatani is now in the super bantamweight division. I mean, he's come through multiple divisions now. This is him trying to become a 4-division world champion, if he is, of course, able to beat Inoue. And I mean, it's going to be exciting to see, because it's also most definite that this fight is going to happen, because all of the sanctioning bodies have put him in the top of their rankings, with a couple of them making him mandatory, which is really surprising. I mean, it finally looks like the sanctioning bodies want to do the same things as boxing fans want to see for once. I mean, most of the time we just see the sanctioning bodies try and get in the way and stop these undisputed champions and try and intercept with their mandatories. And I understand Picasso is a mandatory, but he was a mandatory before Nakatani decided to move up. But like I say, since Nakatani's moved up, he's taken the top position in every kind of mandatory body. Even the IBF, he's not top number one, but there isn't anybody higher than him. So again, that is great to see, and this is still, I mean, it's probably the case that we probably wouldn't have ever seen this event with both of them on the same card if His Excellency wasn't involved. Even though this isn't the big fight, just seeing them on the same event, like I say, is surprising enough in itself. And Nakatani is basically coming off tearing through the bantamweight division in, just a year, really. I mean, he has left the division since, and there's been clear talent there which has been able to become, world champions. There's been some good names that have been able to come through. The Takuma Inoue's, the Tenshin Asukawa, who of course lost to Takuma, but like I say, still is a talent. The Seiya Satsumi's, the Antonio Vargas's, the names like that are around, and there are entertaining fights there. And like I say, Nakatani has just looked levels above any kind of fight in which he's fought. I mean, he fought Nishida, he dominated that fight for the most part, and I mean, like I say, if he does beat Inoue, he will become a 4-weight world champion, which, like I say, is getting himself amongst a kind of pound-for-pound name. And I think he is finally starting to get some recognition as a pound-for-pound star now, like he is, like I say, already a 3-division world champion. Hernandez, he's coming in as an undefeated Mexican who, I mean, is risking a lot in this fight, fighting in Nakatani, not even for a world title. So I do hope that he is getting paid well for this fight. He has a great KO ratio, but in his last fight, he went only to the full distance in his second professional fight out of 20 against Hovhannissian after Picasso beat him. And like I say, he just wasn't able to get to stoppage. He had Hovhannissian kind of up against the ropes and damaged on a couple of occasions, but he wasn't able to do enough to get him out of there. Nakatani against Nishida showed that he can fight in the pocket and dominate. He pounded up Nishida with uppercuts and overhands, and for the most part, that was just, like I said, a pretty brutal beatdown until Nishida's face was pretty much blasted up. I think there was a bit of a head clash in there that caused the eye to have a bit of problems, but I mean, I'm also sure the 10,000 uppercuts in a row that Nakatani was kind of throwing on Nishida, like I say, followed up with the consistent overhands in which he was landing on him as well, really didn't help either. And he did show in that fight, like I say, that he can fight in the pocket and can fight in close and still have success. I mean, it's not something which I recommend him doing in this fight against Hernandez. I'm sure Hernandez, being in the pocket type of fighter who wants to have a bit of a war and come forward to a Nakatani, will want that type of a fight, and it'll be interesting to see if it gets drawn into that type of a fight. But for the most part, we've seen Nakatani be quite a clean boxer, or at least, when he's been at his best getting early knockouts. But I mean, that would, like I say, showed that he doesn't need to be, he can be a kind of rough fighter who can make it, dirty, and can bully up his opponents and can brutalise his opponents and still have success. And that shows, again, that he is such a well-rounded type of fighter. And for Hernandez, I mean, he's somebody who does have a tight guard, but the best way to describe his style is he throws a bit like a robot. He just spams left and right uppercuts because his hands are right in front of him, and then, like I say, just only kind of comes through for the most part with the kind of left to right uppercuts being, like I say, spam with power, but it does leave him open to be countered with the overhands, like I say, because he is throwing always kind of up from a downwards to upwards position. Like I say, it does leave him often for the overhands, and he isn't as fast, in my opinion, as a Nakatani, and that has been shown on a couple of occasions in his fights, at least I believe. But like I say, he is a pressure fighter who is going to try and really probably gun for the knockout. But again, Nakatani is probably going to be in for a bit of a rough fight and probably going to have to deal with a couple of rounds. And it will definitely be interesting to see how Nakatani deals with being in the super bantamweight division, because of course he is somebody who, like I say, wasn't that long ago in the flyweight division. And to now see him at this point, I mean, again, it will be interesting to see. Of course, when Inoue moved up, there was the obvious kind of signs of him getting caught with shots and getting damaged with shots a bit more than he ever was in the bantamweight division. So again, maybe Nakatani might have the same kind of issues. Again, we will have to wait and see. But I still think Nakatani is going to be able to win via a TKO in round 9. I think the way that he pairs up his shots, the way that he can, like I say, catch the openings of Hernandez, and also the speed in which he has, I think he is going to be able to brutalise Hernandez, who for the most part, like I say, is just going to consistently walk onto any kind of shot in which Nakatani wants to land. So it's not going to be particularly hard for Nakatani, who is good at finding the openings for the most part anyway, to just consistently find gaps and openings to land on Hernandez, and like I say, for the most part, kind of brutalise it, even if it is going into the later rounds. And then, like I say, he hopefully will go on to fight the winner of the main event. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.